That's really what a change leader will help you do, is go from start to finish. And sometimes there's some ambiguity in there, right? But we help you navigate that and figure it out.
Welcome to the Delighted Customers Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Slayton, and I'm so glad you're here. I empower leaders to turn indifferent customers into loyal fans. I talk to guests with a wide range of expertise who share meaningful insights and wisdom. We give you practical tips and proven frameworks and share ways to help you delight your customers. I've been doing some research on what's most important to business leaders, and I've heard three major themes. Number one, their employees are burned out and feel overwhelmed. Number two, they're concerned about customer retention. And number three, they want to address customer friction, whether it's controllable or not, but they need actionable results. As a result, I've created the 120-day Quick Start, a 4-step program designed to go from current state assessment to specific strategies to get you actionable results in 120 days. If you want to make a quick impact, check out empoweredcx.com for more information. I'd love to talk to you. Well, my guest today on the Delighted Customers podcast is Doug Flory. Doug is a changeologist. He is on the board of directors of the Association of Change Management Professionals. He is a global change management and transformation expert located at the intersection of change and you, is what it says on his LinkedIn profile. Doug, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm glad to be here. I'm a big fan of customer experience, employee experience, and I definitely think there's an intersection at the crossroads of our two practices. So I look forward to it.
Excellent. Well, we're gonna hopefully give some folks some insights and gems. I'm confident you will. And let's start off. I want to talk a little bit about how we met.
Yeah.
So we first met in Charlotte. I was fortunate enough to ask to be one of the speakers at their first in-person event since COVID hit.
Yeah.
And it was their ACMP get together in Charlotte. It was a conference, a 2-day conference. People were so excited to see each other. And Doug's on the board there, so he was obviously there, and it was very exciting to meet you. What a great event that was.
It was so much fun. Like, the energy was palpable.
Yes.
It was a great opportunity to learn about both of our professions, but I also felt like it was a chance to I think the thing that I took away was where I once had connections, I now have friends, and I built new friends as well. It was a fun experience, and just one that we continue to talk about today. But we're getting ready for the next ones, and we hope that the same thing will be repeated with a different topic.
Well, that's so true, and true in the sense of the energy that was there, and true in the sense of this commonalities that our two professions have. I found sitting in the 2-day conference that a lot of the content overlaps with you. You could have been sitting at a CX conference, a lot of overlap. And I didn't, most CX professionals don't realize the extent to which change management is a profession. It's a discipline unto itself. You guys have a professional certification. There's a couple of them. We'll talk about that a little bit. But for those people who are a little less familiar with change management as a discipline, what is it? What's the difference between CM and OCM, and why is it needed?
Yeah, great question. And I just wanted to add one more thing. You brought a lot of energy to that session in Charlotte, and you fit right in. So thank you for your contributions, because it was amazing what you did. Change management, what is it? It is a profession. Sometimes you don't realize that you are doing it, but you've been doing it. That's how a lot of people find out about it. For example, hey, I've been leading some projects, or I've been creating communications or training content, or thinking about the strategy. Those are some different elements of change management. But what we do is we take a bunch of the different sciences, little bit of art here and a little bit of science there. And we focus truly on the people side of change. So anytime there's a project initiative, whether it's culture, a new system, a new ERP, adopting new policies and procedures, going RTO or hybrid or remote, whatever the preference may be, all these different kinds of things, we're focused on the employees and the people involved. What does this mean? So often we're paired with project management, and project management will, typically focus on time, quality, and budget, and out the door. We take that and we translate that into here's what's in it for you. This is what this means to you. This is how you are being impacted. Here's how you can make this transition state, and we're going to prepare and equip you for that future state so that you're successful, and then continue to embed that for long-term sustainment. The difference between change management and organizational change management, very minor. Change management is really being able to apply a structure, a framework, a methodology in some cases to help you strategically navigate change and also build a plan with different activities along the way to bring your stakeholders along the journey of going from current state, transition state to future state.
Yeah. And I imagine, and I'll let you respond to this, but I imagine that's important because, and a lot of organizations don't have or can't afford a full-time change management professional on staff, or even, if they're relatively small, even hiring an outside consultant like yourself to do that. They have to go through the change. But can you talk about, either as you scale or why it's so helpful to have a professional to help support that?
Yeah, I think oftentimes what I hear when I talk with different companies or people who maybe this is their first rodeo with change management, they think, well, can't we just send an email? And you're like, whoa, no, it's much more than that. And I think what happens is there's different maturation levels of change management. You start at level 1, and that's basically like no change management exists ever. They're just starting to think of the concept of exercising a muscle. And then all the way up to level 5, where that muscle's really strong and it's embedded in their culture. It's done all the time. So meeting them where they're at is really important so that you can help them build that muscle and come along the way. One of the unique things I've also learned about having somebody there who truly understands change management is that sometimes it's an office of one because the size of the company, or perhaps it's a new concept that's just beginning to grow and learn inside of their culture. But sometimes, with some of the bigger fish out there, it's a whole group. It's its own business entity. And there's 20, 50, 100 employees, even firms who are completely dedicated to change management. So it really varies quite the scope, but we can interchange and play with different industries, different applications, different sizes, groups, mom and pops, all the way to the big fish. And it's a lot of fun that way.
Yeah. So Doug, you recently, I want to dig into the actual process of change management so people have an idea of what the context is. You recently wrote on one of your LinkedIn posts here, as we work our way from the current state to the future state, there is a transition state. Yep. And I think you may have already said this today, but the idea of going from current state to future state for some desired benefit really is the whole purpose of change management, right?
Yeah. Because here's what typically happens. Let's pretend role play for a minute, Mark. Let's say you come up with this great vision, whatever that vision may be, and you have to convince everybody that your vision is the way to go, and here's the reasons why. Now, you come up with that, and you have to get, let's say, 1,000 employees to all go from the current state, which is much smaller than what your future state vision looks like, right? So along the way, you got to tell people, here's the vision, here's the why. Here's what happens if we don't do this now. So we have to give them that information. And then what we do is, so basically we'll create some awareness. Then we start to build desire by helping the employees understand, if we do this, this is what's possible. Then we give them knowledge. We equip them with, here's what you need to understand, what you need to know. Then obviously we have to give them the ability to do that. So does that mean that now all of a sudden you're working from home and we got to give you internet access? Or does that mean, you're going to use your same computer, but maybe in a slightly different way? What does that mean? But let's help you understand how to apply that and go through some, typically people go through like learning as they're acquiring those skills, and then they unlearn their old habits and then they relearn the new skills to replace those. So we help them do that. And then ultimately we want reinforcement, and reinforcement maybe on the surface sounds a little bit negative in its context, but we mean reinforcement by reinforcing the good that's happened, recognizing the change and the progress that has happened and rewarding it. That's very important, because then you're kind of embedding and imprinting into people, what does good look like? And I just achieved it. So it then becomes, instead of just a habit, it becomes part of your ritual, your routine, your daily ways of working. That's really what a change leader will help you do, is go from start to finish. And sometimes there's some ambiguity in there, right? But we help you navigate that and figure it out.
Yeah, and it was very clever the way you did that, because I was following along with the way you described that, and the acronym that came up for me was ADKAR.
Exactly.
Which is nothing to do with an automobile or an advertising agency, but it is one of the models for change management. I think it's one of the more popular ones, and so could you share with the audience, just very briefly, you walk through the ADKAR model. There's a couple of other models out there. Could you share briefly, like conceptually, what the difference is? The Kotter one is another one I know.
Yeah, there's a popular slogan out there, and I don't remember who said it right now, but there's every methodology is incorrect. And what that means by that is that you have to be able to understand the methodology and where and when should it be applied, because they all have different unique values and purposes. So some common names of methodologies that are very popular out there: Prosci's ADKAR model, Kotter's 8 steps, Lewin's stages. There's probably 10 others I could name that are like top of mind for a lot of people. There's also some others, and they're typically offered through, you sign up for a class that this consultant or qualified educational provider offers. You attend their class for 2, maybe 5 days, something like that. You pay a fee, you get a textbook and a bunch of materials and some swag, of course, along the way, and they throw in the occasional cookie and things like that. And you learn about the concepts they teach about from their perspective and point of view. ADKAR, Kotter, all those that I mentioned before are examples of those. You walk out of the class, just before you walk out, you take an exam, and it's basically a review of what you've learned during that session. And then, presuming you pass, you get a certificate that you take home with you that says, hey, Mark passed the XYZ course and receives this certificate as a change management professional, something like that, right?
Okay. I was going to ask you in relation to some of the ones you mentioned. The parallel, I happen to be wearing my CXPA shirt there. Yeah. You're listening and can't see the video. In our profession, CX profession, there are a number of places you can go to get certifications. I think of at least 6 off the top of my head. However, there is only one that is neutral, that is independent and neutral, and that is the one through the CXPA, CX Professional Association, called the CCXP, Certified Customer Experience Professional. Is there a parallel with ACMP and change management?
There absolutely is. Thank you for bringing that up, because we are CXPA and ACMP are like brothers and sisters, if you will. We're of the same family. We have a lot of things that are in common. One of those many things that we do have in common is that, just like CXPA, we are a professional association for change management practitioners and professionals.
Okay.
We offer a credential, a professional credential, and I think it's important to distinguish certificate versus credential, because, like I just described, for a certificate, you can pay anybody and go and achieve that, right?
Right.
But a credential is different in the sense that, just like the CCXP,
CCXP, yeah.
CCXP, sorry, I get the acronyms all mixed up. But just like the CCXP, we have something called CCMP, which is Certified Change Management Professional.
Yep.
And what you do is, just like with your certificate, professional credential, just like a certified public accountant has to show their history, their background, their experiences, their ongoing professional development, education, training, all these different things. You have to apply for that. And then if you qualify, you're then advanced and approved to take an exam for the CCMP, and you can take it at a qualified provider all over the world. And assuming you pass that, then you receive, acknowledgement, a badge that you can put on your digital profile. And then you have professional development opportunities along the way that you have to earn and continue to work for, to maintain and renew over the course of time. So we're very much like you. And the other thing that, just really quickly, that we have in common is, you said agnostic. And
I didn't say it, but I meant it.
Well, yeah. But we too are methodology agnostic, because we have what's called the standard. And the standard is our framework that is universal and global about change management. But here's what's unique about it. It's a framework that doesn't say follow step A, B, C in this order, right? It gives you components that you can put together for the proper fundamentals and for you being able to tailor what you need. And it's built upon thousands of volunteers from around the world contributing to this so that it meets ISO standards. So it's very unique in that way. We do not view the CCMP or the standard as in competition with those other mentioned offerings, but those companies that offer those opportunities are part of our umbrella as a professional association around the world, and they are qualified educational providers that are part of our community.
All right, excellent. And Doug, just to go back a step, and when you're talking about distinguishing between change management and the different models, you mentioned that change management, or OCM, organizational change management, is about the people change part of change management in organizations. Right. And I imagine things like Agile and other things are more associated with things like technology. Is that right?
It can be, yeah.
Okay.
But there's also, just like every family, there's cousins and uncles and things like that, where we also have concepts like agile change management. So what the way I like to frame it up and think about that is, change management works well with a lot of different things. It works well with different industries. It works well with different associations, such as yours, CXPA. It also works well with different project models, I guess I would call it, like waterfall, like agile, like Scrum, and so many others that are out there. It's not that it's one size fits all. It's more about tailoring it to your specific approach and strategy.
Okay. All All right. So now for someone who's still trying to get their head around and grasp, what is change management? Why do I need a change management professional or a change management professional or ACMP? No, a CCMP. Get these acronyms right. Can we
quiz later for us, right?
I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'd love to bring the audience through an illustration of an example of a real life situation. You can mask the company, but maybe you can share an example of a company within an industry. What was the trigger that made them even be aware that something needed to change? And then walk through going through one of these processes. You don't have to go step by step, but what would it look like? And so a leader, potentially someone who needs help, could get their arms, around it.
Yeah, I can certainly do that. So one that comes to my mind that I'll share. So this was a global electric and utility company.
Okay.
Is the industry I'll put them in.
Yeah.
They were pretty large. Originally, they started out very small, based out of the UK. Okay. And they acquired different entities that just all of a sudden put them all over the map. And as they did the M&A activity, they, of course, focused on the product and, the money and the customers and getting them all on one platform. But unfortunately, they didn't necessarily focus on the employee experience of bringing all these different cultures, all these different internal systems, and all these different ways of working together. So as they started to do that, they actually hired a change management consultant. And it was somebody who, frankly, didn't do a very good job. Now, basically, what I mean by that is they came in, they typed up all these notes and diagrams and whatever. They gave them this big, huge 3-inch binder and said, "Here you go." And they were like, "This is not what, huh?" And it was, and the worst part about it was that it was their HRIS system, and that impacted human resources, payroll, benefits, all those things that everybody, let's be honest, we come to work, we want to make sure we got that, right? Yeah. So they immediately got impacted, and trust with the employees was like thrown overboard. You messed up my paycheck. I don't care. I don't want to hear the excuses, blah, blah, blah. I want my paycheck. I need to pay my bills. I got to feed my family. Oh, wow. It was a big moment for that organization. And obviously they realized they needed better change management. There's good, there's better, and there's best. They needed best, and they needed some triaging to make it right. That's where I came in. For good news, I wasn't the binder guy. But I came in and I did the triage, and I helped. One of the first things we did was immediately help them reestablish trust, build transparency in communications. We built a strategy, and that strategy had basically what I'll call 5 levers. Number 1, let's make sure we understand who are our stakeholders. Let's identify them. Let's kind of get a sense of what their concerns, their issues, their requirements are. And then let's kind of divide and conquer them. Are they our cheerleaders out in front and they think this is great, let's do it? Or are they maybe somewhere sitting on the fence still trying to decide because maybe they want to learn more? Or are they maybe kind of resistant, perhaps, laggards, still wanting to make a decision later? So identifying them and then being able to engage with them in different tactics and ways is one of your levers. And if you overlook a stakeholder, that can cause further complications. So it's very important to get that right. Second lever I would offer would be understanding what's different about the current state to the future state. And that's called change impacts. So anytime we're implementing some kind of new policy, a system, a procedure, we're changing where and when we work, or anything you can think of, even DEI and cultural aspects. We have to identify what the impacts are so not only we understand them, but the audience, the stakeholders understand them. And we help them to connect and understand what that means to them. And here's what we're going to do to help you. Now that those change impacts really become your bread and butter, because you can then share them with the stakeholders you have identified and talk about those. You can talk about them in the next lever via communications. Obviously, we have to communicate about this change, what's in it. Here's the change impacts. Here's what you can expect as we go forward, and how we're going to equip and prepare you, and the timeline and all those key materials. And what I just want to pause for a moment and emphasize is it's okay to just be honest and transparent and candid and say, you know what? We don't have all the answers right now, but we want to share with you on this journey of change what we do know, and then we'll give you answers as best as we can. Don't wait for, we've got it all the answers and it's in this nice little box wrapped up with a bow and it's just perfect and pretty. Don't wait for that, because that's just going to cause rumors, myths, legends, all that stuff. And you don't want it. Okay, fourth lever. Fourth lever would be training. You have to have some form of e-learning, micro-learning, training in person, training through a learning management system, whatever that looks like. You build a strategy for training. You identify those change impacts. And you say, okay, how can I help senior managers? How can I help my different levels of personas and audience members connect to this? So you'll build videos, you'll build training reference guides, you will build different resources to help them with like on-the-spot self-service type training. Or perhaps we have in-class training and you sign up for something and maybe it's an e-learning at your own convenience, or maybe it's required and you have to go to a conference room or something to complete that training and learn more. That's all part of the strategy and part of the conversation. The fifth lever, and the final one that I would say you absolutely should have, is to be able to look at long-term sustainment. So go live happens with this new thing, whatever that may be. And that doesn't mean that change management stops. That means actually change management just really gets started. Because now all of a sudden you've got the people interacting and playing with that Play-Doh or whatever it is, and they're trying to understand it and smell it and sense it and see what they can do with it, and learn those competencies to get better in their daily role. And you need to be able to sustain it also in the form of, here's the right behaviors we want to model, here's the things we want to recognize, reinforce, and celebrate along the way. And then usually there's going to be continuous development as part of that, or continuous improvement, continuous improvement, because you may realize along the way, hey, we need an enhancement. We have an error, we have a bug, we learned this along the journey. Let's make this better, stronger, faster, able to leap tall buildings, whatever. And you have to be able to manage that change going forward so that someone's accountable to it. If you can do those 5 things, at least those 5 things as the levers, you have a really good chance of success. And that's what a change professional will bring and help you guide through those steps with some art, some science, some experience, some lessons learned, and best practices as well.
Yeah. And I think anytime you're bringing in, an expert, a consultant, they're going to play the role of trusted advisor, someone who has been there, done that, and can accelerate the change process, but also help you with the success rate of the change, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we discuss as part of the strategy is, what does success look like? And here's some key metrics. We want to take a data-driven approach, not just kind of put our thumb in the wind and see which way the wind's blowing and say, yeah, I guess that's good. So we definitely want to talk about that, and we want to socialize it so that early, but not too quick. And what I mean by that is, if you don't do this exercise, then toward go live and beyond, other people are going to say, oh, well, I thought success would look something like this. Oh, I thought success would be, and all of a sudden you've got to manage all these different expectations and definitions of what success was perceived to be. Yeah. And you don't want that. You want to have a set group of, when we hit this is when we can transition. This is when you succeeded. and here's the data that we can use to validate and verify that.
I wanted to just talk about what you said here about, which I love, which was, we may say at some point we don't have all the answers, right? And I think there's a real fear of leaders admitting, through the middle of some big transition. You shared a number of M&A, different M&A activities. That's a great example of a big change. I think there's a fear. And I want to talk to you about trust, because to me, that transparency is one of the building blocks of trust. You and I offline have talked about the importance of trust in both of our professions when it comes to, trust that's built with customers or employees. And trust when it comes to your first step, I think, it's all the steps, but when you're building trust with key stakeholders, talk more about the role of trust when it comes to change management.
To me, one of the things I've learned in the last, I'll say 3-4 years, especially since the pandemic, both through experience, but also through observation and just curiosity, is I believe trust is at the core of so many of the things that we are facing today, whether it's professionally, society, social aspects, or just maybe some of the physical, mental, emotional things we're going through. I think if you look at anything and everything, it all goes back to trust. And as a change professional, when you come in, you automatically have to understand how to establish trust, because just the words, I manage change, and you're going to go talk to somebody, they're thinking, uh-oh, what's going on? They're consolidating, they're getting rid of my job, they're going to change everything. Oh my gosh, and all these rampant ideas start happening, and you're like, no, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to, negative change for you, anything like that. So you have to come in there and be able to build that trust and start off with candor and, understand and kind of use body language, digital body language or physical body language in person to understand how is this person responding to how things are going. And trust to me is at the core of being able to speak candidly, to be able to speak and communicate openly, to not hide any key information under your sleeve or anything like that. You have to be transparent. So let me give an example of, if I may, of why it truly makes a difference and seeing leaders go through that exact challenge that you mentioned.
Yeah,
that
please.
Can be hard. I think if you watch, it seems like every day, at least for me, I'm seeing the employee experience being impacted because companies they did not take advantage of the time during the last 3 or 4 years to think about their long-term strategy and the long-term game. They just said, well, let's just wait for this thing to blow over and then we'll just keep on going. Or maybe they came out of it and they said, oh, we need to react, we need to respond. But they didn't necessarily have a game plan or anything. They're trying to figure it out. And you see this every day in the form of, hey, we're declaring everybody come back to the office now. Or, oh, no, we're going to put that on hold and you can come back later next year or something like that. And I just imagine the employee experience of going through that flip-flop, 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 and all the personal changes you've made for you as a person, as a human. You've gotten childcare. You've adjusted your home to build an office and a place to work. You have adjusted your schedule. You've gotten used to these new things. No commute. I can do this. I can work that time. I have a little bit more freedom, right? And now all of a sudden they're like, oh, no, 3 days a week, 9 to 5. We're going to scan your business card when you come in. And to me, that's not trust. That's chaos, especially from the employee experience, because you're trying to juggle everything and understand, where do I go? I think that just creates mistrust because there's a lack of clarity, a lack of commitment to something. You're not being credible. You're not being reliable. You're not intimate. You're not personalized. That communication and thinking about it. And that's what we need. And that's why it may be hard for some leaders to say, you know what, I don't have all the answers. I think that's perfectly normal. Nobody has all the answers. Sometimes we learn along the journey and we thought this was going to be the way, but maybe instead it's another way. That's okay. Share that. It brings because if you wait for that perfect package with the little bow and the shiny wrapping paper, you might deliver surprises. Whereas if you bring the employee or the customer along on the journey, it's transparent. There's no big, here comes the big thing, right? They're there with you.
Yeah. People are generally speaking are resistant to change, and they like surprises even less.
Especially when it's a big one. And I was at a company just before back in PC era, pre-COVID. And I was fortunate enough to come on board, and this was an institution where, historically speaking, for I can't remember how long, but at least a decade or more, they had a strategy of office-centric approach. They had offices all over the world, just like that. And then when that came and that happened, they opted to go and be, remote first, hybrid second, office third for intentional purposes. And so going through that process, we had to be transparent. We had to engage with the employees. We had to bring them along the journey and understand them. And if we wouldn't have done that, we would not have been successful. But we were wildly successful instead, because they were part of the story. They helped us answer some questions, give us some knowledge and insight to make some good decisions. Yeah.
Well, let me just double tap on that as well, because at the top you talked about art and science, and same is true for customer experience management. There's a new book coming out later this month by a guy named Joe Wheeler, who was involved in the Service Profit Chain Institute, which talked about the impact of the employee experience and their satisfaction on the customer experience, and their satisfaction, loyalty, and ultimately business outcomes. That was written 30 years ago by 3 Harvard professors. He's come out with a book called Digital Customer Experience, and he's exploring, the impact of digital, how it might affect things, how we can embrace digital. And one of the stories he shared was Starbucks. And as it relates to loyalty, and to your point about the arc of COVID. So what he shares was that over first of all, it's hard for anyone in retail during COVID, because they had to show up. They had to show up in person. And one of the things that happened is they had an increase in volume in sales, but they had trouble staffing their stores for some of the reasons that are kind of obvious. And then they started to get to the point where talking specifically about the risk associated with not doing what you just talked about well. So there's risk associated about not having trust with your employee base. And especially in a time when maybe there's some shortages, maybe there's labor pool shortages. So what happened was you had Starbucks locations that were 22 locations or something that were forming a union. And Howard Schultz came back in 2022 and started to right the ship, which had really lost its way, even though sales were growing. And some of the impact of that was weirdly brought in, but the increase in volume, in particular, the increase in frozen drinks. So people wanted more frappuccinos than ever before. And they were treating themselves, I guess, because they couldn't do other things. So that takes a lot longer to craft. Along with some of the baked goods, because of the volume, and that was burning out the people who were there, and then ultimately they became unhappy. And Schultz came in and just admitted that we missed the target. We didn't take care of our employees. We lost sight of it, and he started to institute a number, like 20 different things, including things like repackaging. So preparing some of the drinks, preparing some of the food ahead of time. So it took half the time for the baristas and the staff there to create those things. Offering them totally flexible schedules, work when you want schedule, offering them more education, career pathing. They wanted a master barista class so they could learn how to become, like the CCMP version of a Starbucks barista. I don't know what the acronym would be, but so the risk associated with not doing what you just said. Well,
yeah, that's a great example. He did an amazing pivot to help them. And he was totally focused on the employee to help them understand their changes, their challenges, and how to get through the change. And, you think about today, so many things you read, like not just labor shortages, but like burnout, anxiety, stress. Part of that is a result of this. You're not responding to their needs and how to help them. And I think it's Richard Branson that says, like, take care of your employees and they'll take care of your customers. And I think that's really true.
Yeah. And in all the ways, in all the ways in your 5-step model, it's taking care of them through engaging stakeholders and understanding the change that's going to impact them, and communicating with them the changes that are going to happen. I think part of that communication, it's true in the CX world, is got to be continuously listening to them.
Yes.
And hearing what's going on, because even through the change, they may be telling you some things that are true for them, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things that's kind of one of your levers, if you will, of customer experiences, listening to voice of the customer. Or we use the same concept. Here's another similarity. We use the same concept, but we call it voice of the employee. And we want to listen to their voice, hear their ideas, because those good ideas can come from anywhere. It doesn't have to come from the top. It might be that person who, may be frontline, Freddie, and is new to the company, and they have a great idea. Why not consider it? Why not incorporate it and then recognize and reward them and engage them to make it a reality? That would be totally amazing experience of the difference that employee made with their contribution and knowing that they did something. That's what people really, that's where you get the engagement. That's where you get more trust.
Yeah. And I think, tell me what you think on this one. I think there's another wave of change coming. I came from the banking industry. So in banking, it was all about automating the customer onboarding process, bringing systems together. So there weren't 7 different places that people would have to look to find an answer for a customer, and automating, middleware, bringing those things together, a common platform. Now it's going to be AI.
Yeah.
And I think, you tell me what you think. I think the danger is going to be, we've got AI. We could just automate or use AI to swap out this function, which was done by a human. And you just do that, right? Isn't that a huge risk?
I had this experience just literally yesterday. I called a well-known online retailer who has everything from A to Z. I'll say it that way.
Yeah.
And they sent an automated notification, and it said, "Hey, we didn't get that product back from you that you returned." And I was like, "Oh yeah, you did," because I followed your process. I took it to the local store, and they scanned it in. They put it in the box. They shipped it to you and gave me a confirmation. And they were like, "Oh, well, we didn't get that confirmation, so you still need to send it in." I was like, "This is clearly a bot, number one, kind of automated pre-canned message."
Yeah.
So then I had to navigate and figure out, how do I even talk to somebody at this company? I finally got a hold of somebody, and once I did talk to them, it was a great experience. They offered tremendous customer service. They immediately identified and resolved it. They said, "Please don't worry about that. That's clearly a mistake. You're done. We're good. Everything's solid." I was just like, wow. Like, when I first read the message, I was like, I got a little bit like, my feathers got a little ruffled, and I was like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
I've got to take time out of my day and tell you that you're wrong, and you do have what you got. But then once I talked to the person, it was just like, oh yeah, no problem, easy. Boom, 1 minute, I was on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So AI has an unlimited, untapped potential, things that we don't even know yet. I think what companies like Microsoft and Google and those innovators are doing have a lot of tremendous positive possibilities. But I also just watched an article with the CEO of Google, and they said that they have strategically laid out this first phase or wave of artificial intelligence because they know that there's much more coming, but they want to give just enough so that people can start to absorb and understand and apply it rather than just unleashing the entire thing. And that I just heard that and I was like, wow, we're just now learning what this thing can do, this generative AI. And it's sometimes it's hard to even know, like, is this really written by humans or is this a picture by an artist? Or it's really hard, but it has so much potential. We just have to learn as humans, how can we apply it to leverage it for our purposes? Because at the center and the core of all of it is still going to be somebody looking at that art, somebody who's still going to read that message or whatever. And there's got to be human interaction somewhere in that process. We just got to figure it out.
Yeah, and each step of the way, there's going to be change that happens.
Exactly.
We got to be managing that change.
Yeah. Yep.
Hey, Doug, this has been incredibly fun. I can't tell you how much I've learned, and I hope our audience members have learned as well. I have one last question that I ask all my guests, which is, what advice would you give your 20-year-old self?
Oh, man. I got to be honest with you. This is the hardest question you're asking me, because as I was preparing and thinking, I was just like, what would I tell myself? Like, man, when I was 20, I had lots of family and personal issues going on. And I never would have thought I would have been where I am today. I was on a different track for so many reasons. But ultimately, I had different plans when I graduated from my undergrad. I was going to go into sports medicine. Then events changed, and I was somehow led to this concept of change management and project management and Lean Six Sigma. And when I was introduced to it, apparently I was pretty good at it. And I've just been riding that wave since. So I guess my point is, as I look back 20 years ago, how did I get to where I am? Yes, I originally had a master plan, but I also knew how to pivot and ride the wave and what my passion was. So no, I never started out to say, hey, I'm going to lead global transformation and the people side of change. I had a different plan, but I wrote it and I love it. So that's what I would tell myself.
Nice. Very nice. Excellent. And you are an expert in change management, and grateful that you were able to join me on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. And I loved it. It was a lot of fun. And if I can answer any questions for you, or if anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn and ask some questions, I'm more than open to it.
So would LinkedIn be the best way for them to reach out to you if they wanted to?
Yeah, I'm pretty active on there. So you can message me, you can follow my stuff, learn more. I continue to talk about change management. Actually just got recognized as a top voice on LinkedIn for change management and change leadership. So awesome. And I see it's Douglas Flory, Flory. Yep. Just like glory, but with an F.
Excellent. Well, on that note, we'll wish you the best and look forward to coming together again sometime soon.
I look forward to that, and I wish you the best as well. Enjoy the summer and the beach.
Thank you, Doug. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Delighted Customers podcast. I'd like to ask you a favor. If you have enjoyed this episode or any of my other ones, hit subscribe or follow. I've got a lot of other great guests that are coming up and a lot of other great content, and I don't want you to miss anything. You can find any links or references on the show in the show notes, and you can find those on my website at empoweredcx.com.